Sega. It's a name that is synonymous with a prosperous era in video game history. The console wars, the 16-bit era, and the 4th generation of video game consoles. It brought us a monumental battle between two titans of the industry, Sega versus Nintendo. It was a battle of wills and slogans, including the now infamous Sega can what Nintendo don't, and the introduction of blast processing. Like all battles and wars, leaders are needed, with generals leading the charge and mascots representing these two titans for the fans to get behind. Leading the line for Nintendo was Mario. This man needs no introduction, but we will flip through this as briefly as possible. He was created in 1981 and appeared in Donkey Kong as Jumpman, had his first solo game with the arcade game Mario Bros in 1983, until having his real breakthrough in 1985 with Super Mario Bros. Becoming the official mascot for Nintendo. Damn, I'm good! He is the biggest icon and most recognisable character of the video game industry, crossing over to all forms of other media. Over the years, many Nintendo characters would join Mario, such as Link from The Legend of Zelda, Samus from Metroid, and Pit from Kid Icarus to oppose Sega's singular mascot, Alex Kidd, who was deemed no longer up to the fight and was subsequently kicked to the curb. Sega couldn't fight against Nintendo, who had become the biggest and best video game company in the world. In 1991, Sega's search and creation of a new mascot to challenge Mario and Nintendo came to fruition. An anthropomorphic blue hedgehog with the ability to run at supersonic speeds, a cool demeanour and attitude to boot, stepped up and was given his first official game, Sonic the Hedgehog. Alex Kidd in Miracle World was released in 1986 on the Sega Master System and was the predecessor to Sonic. These two had followed Professor Asobin in 1983, Dr. Games in 1984, and Opa Opa in 1986. Many believe it to be Sonic as Sega's only mascot ever, but Alex Kidd was the OG mascot as he brought Sega a new level of success. Even though Alex Kidd's debut game was very well received and deemed as a classic by many, his follow-up games didn't live up to the magic of the original. With Mario and Nintendo gaining more popularity between 1985 and 1991, Alex Kidd was subsequently kicked aside and left in the wilderness, while Sega looked high and low to find their new big player. Sega were desperate to challenge Nintendo after limited success of their arcade games being ported to the Sega Genesis. In 1988, Sega began an in-house competition. The challenge? Create a mascot to rival Mario. Programmers and designers worked hard to create this character, and Sega president Hayao Nakayama wanted a character as iconic as Mickey Mouse, and ordered the in-house development team that this character was to be featured in his very own game. In the beginning, it was just Yuji Naka who had impressed with his work on Phantasy Star and the Genesis port of Ghouls and Ghosts, and Naoto Oshima doing the work. The team then originally consisted of 7 men, 2 programmers, 2 sound engineers, and 3 designers who worked on the game. The game had possibly the coolest code name ever. Defeat Mario. Short, simple, and to the point of the task at hand. Hirokazu Yasuhara came on board the Sonic ship to supervise Naka and Oshima on their work because of his experience, and eventually became the lead designer for the game. Yasuhara was the brains behind the idea of having Sonic do his attack by jumping to make sure the game is playable with only one button. Then, the trio came to the joint decision of having Sonic also rolling up into a ball to attack as well. The Sega Genesis was known for its blast processing, and so with this, the focus was placed on speed. Sonic co-creator Naoto Oshima, along with Yuji Naka, only considered fast animals like squirrels and kangaroos, so any animal design not associated with a fast animal was binned straight away. At one point, a rabbit with prehensile ears where its appendages are able to grasp or hold showed promise but was deemed too complex for the Genesis hardware, so he hit the scrap heap. Side note, aspects of this idea was used for Ristar, and this character design was released as a skin for Sonic in Sonic Superstars, released in 2023. It was decided that this fast animal needed to be able to roll into a ball as its primary attack, and on top of that, it was agreed that it wasn't aggressive enough, so they wanted an animal with spikes, leading to an armadillo, and hedgehog design leading the way. Oshima took some of these designs with him to New York City and performed an informal poll in Central Park. In the end, Mr. Hedgehog was chosen to be the best design. Oshima said in an interview with Gamasutra that he felt people chose this design because it transcends race and gender and things like that. When Oshima returned to Japan, he pitched the Mr. Hedgehog design to the department and he was picked. Side note, the armadillo design would be used as the basis for Mighty the Armadillo, who shares a lot of similarities to Sonic when placed side by side. Oshima would also go on to explain that the basic design of Sonic was a combination of Felix the Cat's head and Mickey Mouse's body. That is a weird and scary thought. At the Game Developers Conference in 2018, Oshima would say, "In creating this character, we didn't want it to be too foreign or too pronounced. We wanted a level of familiarity and even comfort. The point was to make it into a character that feels familiar." Originally coloured with a shade of teal, then a light blue, and finally it landed on dark blue to stand out against the background and to match the colour of the Sega logo. Michael Jackson and Santa Claus were inspirations to Sonic as well. Originally, his shoes had buckles to match Michael Jackson's shoes on the cover of the Bad album, and red and white was chosen because, well, Santa wears red and white and he is considered as the most famous character in the world. Such a weird inspiration, but that's what Oshima has said. His words, not mine. Sonic spikes were made to be sleeker and make him look sleeker as well, and was given his Sonic spin attack, so attacking and jumping could be controlled with one button. You'll never guess what his original name was. Tell you what, I'll give you 10 seconds to guess. Right, guesses in? Okay, here goes. It was Mr. Needle Mouse. What the kind of name is that? Thank Christ that they changed the name, because if Sega had stuck to that, boy, it would have been a huge mistake. Mr. Needle Mouse. Anyway, the 8-man team decided that it was stupid and changed it to Sonic, and also took on the name Sonic Team. Oshima stated that this name was chosen to represent speed. Ideas were thrown around for Sonic to be in a rock band, which was done with 1999's Sonic Underground. Have vampire fangs, which was kind of done with Sonic Unleashed, but given to Rouge the Bat. And a human girlfriend named Madonna. Bloody hell, that's dumb. Oh wait, these weird moments with Princess Elise in Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic 06. In a wonderful moment of clarity, Sega of America scrapped these ideas to keep his identity simple. Designing Sonic looks like it wasn't as much of an arduous task as you think. Going through a process of elimination of what animal to go with, and then choosing the character through that unofficial poll done the trick. Simple design work is the answer sometimes, and to think that taking the head of Felix the Cat and body of Mickey Mouse became the basis of the design, a perfect combination of Sonic's dark blue colour with the Sega logo would prove to be, well, perfect. It was a clear indication that Sonic was the man for Sega. When the Sonic design was chosen, 4 more brave souls joined the development team. Sonic's identity being kept simple was the answer all along. Okay, they probably wanted to flesh him out some more with interests or personality qualities and who he associates with, but a girlfriend named Madonna in a rock band? Nah mate. And Mr. Needle Mouse, get the f*** out of here with that name. Sonic Team nailed it with his personality by keeping it simple and showing his subtle attitude. Sega was a company with one mission: beat Nintendo. They had created a mascot who was cool, hip, and appealed to a teenage demographic as opposed to a younger demographic. He wasn't a cute character because this guy had attitude. He hit the scene in 1991 and came out with a bang! He was not going to lay back and take a beating, he was going to fight back and lead Sega to an era of glory. Sonic's greatest strength in comparison to Mario was his attitude. He was cool and hip and appealed to gamers of an older age, the young and cool teenage demographic. If they liked Sonic, you liked Sonic. If anyone else liked Mario, then in their eyes, you were a loser.
Le who? The her.
You didn't want to be a part of that group. Naoto Oshima said at the Game Developers Conference in 2018 that cool can be something that's more on the surface, visual or expressive, or just cool character design. But that wasn't the cool that we were looking for. Mario was a different kettle of fish to Sonic. Sonic is quick-witted, easygoing, has a short temper, and lacks patience. A habitual daredevil, loyal, and honest to his friends, keeps his promises, dislikes tears, and doesn't want to get married to his stalker Amy Rose. He also loves chili dogs. Mario, on the other hand, was none of these. He's like the wind, a drifter who lives his life as he pleases and makes his life a series of events and adventures. He dislikes oppression and is a strong proponent for freedom. All of his animal friends have been enslaved in the enemy casings, and it is up to Sonic to free them. He is known as the fastest hedgehog alive, and that is not that hard to achieve that, with his greatest attribute being, of course, his speed. At the Game Developers Conference in 2018, Oshima said this about why the Sonic Spin Attack was chosen. It's a character you can imagine dealing damage by curling up like a ball and rolling around. Using his Sonic Spin Attack, Sonic can break boxes to get extra lives, shields, invincibility, and rings. Sonic loves rings, and collecting 50 of them opens up a giant ring at the end of the stage, leading to a special zone, and collecting 100 of them gets you an extra life. The only thing our hero can't do is swim. Whenever he gets into a large body of water, he drops to the bottom like a ton of bricks. Under the water though, luckily, are air bubbles, and hitting a large air bubble can stop you from drowning, because if your timer hits 0, then Sonic is done for. The reason for this? Yuji Naka, one of the fathers of Sonic the Hedgehog, believed that hedgehogs couldn't swim. Sonic was created with the intention to rival Mario. From his personality, how he loves his life, his attacks, the world he inhabits, everything really differentiates him greatly from Mario. Kids and young teenagers were drawn to him, and with the added hardware power of the Sega Genesis, Sonic was ready to become a major player within the video game world. Every hero needs an arch nemesis. Mario has Bowser, Link has Ganon, Batman has the Joker, Sonic has Dr. Evo Eggman Robotnik, a mad scientist with the IQ of 300 and a certifiable genius. He has an affinity for machines and authority, and his main goal is to conquer the world, creating his own utopia known as the Robotnik Empire. He is incredibly selfish, doesn't care for others' opinions, and a self-proclaimed gentleman. And also based on Humpty Dumpty. This tubby mountain of goo is responsible for enslaving the animals and encasing them in his machines. He is also currently in possession of the Chaos Emeralds and using them to exact his evil plan. What are the Chaos Emeralds? They are mystical emeralds with incredible power. Each emerald on their own is said to possess mystical properties, and when all 7 are collected and together, they have the power to warp time and space, powering machines and initiating super transformations. They are not something to be trifled with. It is up to Sonic to stop him, free the animals, and bring peace to the land. We've established that Sega was known for its blast processing and that the main focus on Sonic was his speed. Naka wanted Sonic to overtake Mario in the American market, and it was decided that Sonic's default speed would be the equivalent of Mario's running speed. Like all things in life, they did hit some unfortunate problems along the way. When tests were run using the Genesis tool library, they encountered flickering, slow frame rates, and shaky animation. Increasing Sonic's speed caused the animation team problems, but the genius that Naka is, used an algorithm and retained fluidity, making the animation much more smooth, and then they had to sort the problem of Sonic's speed to make sure he adhered to the developers' expectations. How did they solve this? They slowed him down.
You did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
You'd think the loops, tunnels, and multiple objects and the lot were created to try and showcase what the Genesis could do. Yep, of course they were. They were designed on pen and paper first, and Yasuhara said in the Game Developers Conference in 2018, "I actually didn't have proper game design documents." You'd think that a designer would have those tools at hand, but nope. Yasuhara designed the levels to appeal to both hardcore and casual gamers by integrating occasional challenging set pieces into the mostly accessible level design. Naka was inspired by the man himself, the creator of Mario, Shigeru Miyamoto, whose games he enjoyed playing years earlier. Naka admired the simplicity of Miyamoto's mechanics in complex environments, and Naka decided that Sonic would be controlled with just the D-pad and attack and jump with a single button. Naka wanted Sonic to be more action-orientated than the Mario games after he wondered why the levels could not be cleared more quickly. The patron saints of Sonic, Naka, Oshima and Yasuhara, would work 19 hours a day for several months to get the game done. With the need to demonstrate the Genesis' technical prowess over its competition, Sonic the Hedgehog underwent extensive testing and redesign over the course of 6 months. Naka would state that they had the fastest ever character speed in a video game, and a rotation effect in the special stage was considered impossible on the console. But those geniuses did it. Long before the testing and redesigns though, Naka had developed a prototype game, a platform game with a fast-moving character rolling in a ball through a long winding tube, and this concept was fleshed out by Oshima's characters and Yasuhara's level designs. Naka spent 8 months working on Green Hill Zone due to constant restarts and found the process very interesting. The team attempted to create maps, and implementing the loops in each level proved to be a challenge because Sonic would break through the structures instead of running around them. This applied to the backgrounds because of the game's speed. It gave the impression that Sonic was going backwards, even though he was going forwards. But those geniuses fixed it. again. To add an extra layer of challenge to the game, the zones are littered with spikes, bottomless pits, crushing walls, lava, falling platforms, running out of breath, and running out of time. Yep, if the timer hits 10 minutes, you lose a life. Springs and slopes increase Sonic's speed, adding an element of danger because if you go too fast, you could get hit. Signposts act as a checkpoint, so if you die and lose a life, you just start right back there again. Sonic's first game was split into 6 zones with 3 acts, and at the end of the 3rd act is a boss fight with Dr. Robotnik. These are Green Hill, Marble, Spring Yard, Labyrinth, Starlight, and Scrap Brain. Beating all of these zones gets you to the final zone with a final one-on-one encounter with Dr. Robotnik, and beating him ends the game. So, we've covered the birth of Sonic, his designs, his original names, inspirations, level designs, Nemesis and such. Not in great detail, but we've got to move like Sonic and speed this up a little bit. So let's get to the release and reviews. Sonic the Hedgehog was a critical and commercial success. Here are some of the scores the game received. Yeah, safe to say Sonic smashed it there. But the commercial success? Oh boy, let's take a look. Could it get any better? Why yes, Sonic the Hedgehog won the following awards. Here's what some of the reviewers said about Sonic the Hedgehog. John Cook of Computer and Video Games said it was another jumpy game in the Mario mold, but with an astonishing turn of speed and great music. Paul Rand of Computer and Video Games called its colour scheme as lively but never garish. He praised the interaction of colour with detail in the sprites, backgrounds and animation, and described the graphics as the best available to the Mega Drive. Boogeyman of GamePro called its intricate backgrounds as eye-popping and gorgeous, which was echoed by meme machines. GameZone called the animation some of the smoothest and fastest ever seen. The music would receive high praise as well, being described by multiple reviewers and publications as great, amazing, catchy. This was the first Sega Genesis Mega Drive game I ever played, and as a kid back in the early 90s, this was a mind-blowing game. Everything was awesome, from the gameplay to the music to the characters and collecting the Chaos Emeralds. There were times when I beat the game and got them all, sometimes I didn't, and seeing that smug bastard Dr. Robotnik taunt me by juggling whatever Chaos Emeralds I didn't get drove me mad. This was the dream scenario that Sega wanted, and they got it. They had created a brand new cultural icon to challenge Mario, and all I can say is, well done Sega. But, like all things in life, you've got to move on and move to the next big thing. After the unprecedented success of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sega directed Sega Technical Institute's founder, Mark Kearney, to start work on Sonic 2 in November 1991. Members of the original team moved from Japan to California to work on the project. These included Yuji Naka and Hirokazu Yasuhara. Naoto Oshima stayed in Japan to work on Sonic CD, so he was replaced by Yasushi Yamaguchi. The goal for Sonic 2 was to make it faster and more ambitious, but with multiple setbacks along the way, Cultural differences between the American and Japanese staff and numerous levels being cut due to time constraints and quality concerns, it wasn't the smoothest ride to be on and needed to be ready for the 1992 Christmas and holiday shopping season, giving them 11 months to develop the sequel. The development team had grown and consisted of both Japanese and American staff working for Sega, or STI, and were met with their first problem: immigration issues. Development on Sonic 2 started with just the American staff because the Japanese staff faced immigration problems regarding their visas. According to Mark Kearney, Sega had applied for O1 expert visas for nationally or internationally recognized people with a record of extraordinary achievement, unaware that the Japanese team did not qualify for. After all this was sorted, the game development went into full swing. The plan for Sonic 2 was to go all out and make Sonic 2 better than Sonic 1. Seeing as most sequels are considered to be inferior to the original, Sega and STI wanted to avoid this. They wanted Sonic to be faster, they wanted the game to be bigger, give Sonic another attack, flesh out a big and ambitious plot, the introduction of a second playable character, the cutting of certain content, and using experimental gameplay elements both in the main game and special stages. All of the gameplay and mechanics were retained from Sonic the Hedgehog. The game could be played just using the D-pad and a singular button. You jump on enemies using the Sonic spin attack and destroy them to release the cute animals from their mechanical prison. You still collect rings, shields, a speed power-up, invincibility, hit signposts, and they become checkpoints. Sonic still drowns whilst underwater for too long, you still got a 10-minute time limit, you'd still face Dr. Robotnik at the end of each zone, a gradual difficulty increase as you progress, and so on. But what was added to the game? Yuji Naka conceived the Sonic Spin Dash attack. Here Sonic curls up into a ball, spins in the spot, and gets faster the more you smash the button and shoots off with great momentum. This was created as Naka recognised this as a big piece of criticism from Sonic 1 when backtracking for momentum. To also counteract the slow backtracking and overall enjoyability of the game, in Sonic 1, Sonic had a cap that would limit his speed. What did the developers and Naka do to make Sonic faster? They removed the speed cap. Simple. In Sonic 1, if you collected 50 rings and reached the end of Act 1 or 2, you'd be met with a giant ring, and if you jumped into it, you were sent to a special stage and could collect a Chaos Emerald. In Sonic 2, this was modified where if you collected 50 rings and hit a checkpoint signpost, a set of sparkling stars would emerge and you would be sent to a special stage to collect a Chaos Emerald. I'll talk more about that later. To enhance the gameplay in the main game and the special stages, Yasuhara decided to use 3D elements to make Sonic 2 stand out against Sonic 1. Naka would think of things in the context of a 3D world to figure out certain elements such as the corkscrew loops and pipes, creating a further blend of 3D in a 2D environment. Casino Night was designed after being inspired by pinball tables. He found that Sonic Springs were reminiscent of the gimmicks that were found on pinball tables, with this idea being further fleshed out in Sonic Spinball. Sky Chase Zone was inspired by Hayao Miyazaki's anime Future Boy Conan, where Sonic rides a biplane in an attempt to reach Dr. Robotnik's base. The special stages received the biggest overhaul. In Sonic 1, when you go into a special stage, you are placed into a 2D environment with walls and have to navigate your way through a maze and breaking through bricks to get the Chaos Emerald. If you landed on a set of red blocks, you would lose and exit the special stage. In Sonic 2, instead of a flat 2D environment, you are transported to a 3D looking environment, a half pipe if you will, and have to collect rings. Sounds easy, right? Wrong! Each special stage is comprised of 3 sections, and you have to collect a certain number of rings to move on to the next section. Each section increases the number of rings to collect, and the jumps can be criminal at times. After the 3rd section, if you have collected a sufficient number of rings, you get the Chaos Emerald. If you fail at any point, you're sent back to the zone empty-handed. There are 7 Chaos Emeralds to collect, and each special stage increases in difficulty. When you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you get the greatest prize of all. And I'll come back to that later. To expand the game, Sonic 2 had more zones. It increased from 6 and the final zone to 11 zones in total. The number of acts in each zone was reduced from 3 to 2, except for Metropolis Zone, and a couple only had 1 act. The zones are as follows: Emerald Hill, Chemical Plant, Aquatic Ruin, Casino Night, my personal favourite, Hilltop, Mystic Cave, Oil Ocean, Metropolis, my personal most hated, Sky Chase, Wing Fortress, and Death Egg. Each zone is designed to be longer and more difficult than the previous game, with more traps, badniks, annoying badniks, and paths to follow. As previously stated, at the end of each zone you face Dr. Robotnik. In Sky Chase, it is an auto-scrolling zone and doesn't have an end boss. In Death Egg, you face 2 bosses, one after the other. In Metal Sonic, his first appearance, and then Dr. Robotnik in one last final showdown. Let's take a moment and have a look at what the original plot started as. In the beginning, STI wanted a game outline for the developers to flesh out with a book-length report detailing all the characters, their backstory, the main story and plot and levels. Yasuhara had very ambitious plans for Sonic 2 and designed it with blue sky, theoretical, ideas. He initially conceived a plot where Dr. Robotnik had taken over the world and Sonic had to use time travel to stop him. This would have utilised a featured concept of a world map that would change a viewer in the past or future and provide access to different levels. This was conceived when Yasuhara was under the impression that Sonic 2 had a 2-year development timetable, and this idea was scrapped because of time constraints and too many levels to create. But the time travel aspect was used in Sonic CD. In fact, a couple of the zones in the final game still retain their original designs from when the time travel aspect was still in consideration. Hilltop Zone was imagined to be a past version of Green Hill from Sonic 1, seeing as some of the enemies you face in the zone are dinosaur-looking enemies, the lava, and the layout of the zone matches and resembles Green Hill. Chemical Plant and Casino Night were envisioned as zones in a world where Robotnik had taken over the world. The final plot is as follows. Sonic and his new sidekick, Miles Tails Prower, have found out that Dr. Robotnik is attempting to obtain the Chaos Emerald on West Side Island.
East Side is the best.
West Side is the best.
To power his new space station, the Death Egg. Sonic and Tails must defeat Robotnik's Badnik army and free their animal friends while racing to stop the Doctor's deadly weapon. I seem to have mentioned a new character, but before I get to him, let's rewind a moment and look at a different brand new introduction. When you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you get the greatest prize of all. You get to become Super Sonic. Super Sonic is what you get when you gain the power of all 7 Chaos Emeralds, and when you change into Super Sonic, you turn gold, can run faster, jump further, and you're almost indestructible. You can still drown and be crushed, so watch out. To become Super Sonic is very simple. Once you have all the Chaos Emeralds, collect 50 rings, jump in the air, and press one of the main buttons and boom. But
remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
or great taxation in this case when you turn into Supersonic. For every second you are Supersonic, you lose 1 ring. So, if you have 50 rings, you can be Supersonic for 50 seconds. Just keep collecting rings to stay as it. Effectively, Supersonic is the strongest being in the galaxy. But, I also mentioned a new sidekick. What was his name again? Say hello to Tails. His real name? Miles per hour, which is a pun on miles per hour. I know, it's hilarious. So, who created Tails? What's his story? How did he become friends with Sonic and join him on his adventures? How do you play as him? Finally, what else could you do with Tails? It was Yasuhara who wanted to introduce a second playable character in Sonic 2, and Naka suggested that this second character be endearing, similar to the Kitsune from Urusei Yatsura, and beginner oriented as opposed to Sonic's rival. An internal contest was held to design the character, and it was Yamaguchi's Fox design that won. Naka has stated that Tails was originally intended to be a Tanuki. You may remember that from Super Mario Bros. 3 with Mario and his Tanuki suit. A Tanuki is a raccoon-like canine native to East Asia and extremely popular in Japanese folklore. Yamaguchi has refuted this and has stated that Tails was always meant to be a fox. STI wanted Tails to not only appeal to American audiences but to Japanese audiences, and Yamaguchi designed him with his unique 2 tails, which was inspired by the Phantasy Star character, Meow, to make his design more impactful. Sega of America felt that his given name, Miles per Hour, wouldn't sell, so gave him the nickname Tails to sell him to an American audience. His story is as follows. Tails has his unique 2 tails due to a unique genetic mutation, giving him 2 tails instead of 1. Because of this genetic mutation, Tails was the subject of bullying and was quite shy and reserved. Upon meeting Sonic, he wanted to emulate his new hero and best friend and opened up his personality a lot more. They have been inseparable ever since. He is a very bright and intelligent young fox. At the age of 8 years old, he is also a brilliant mechanic, designing and building many inventions over the years to defeat Dr. Robotnik. He can also perform the spin attack and spin dash attacks, is capable of swimming and can fly. But this is only for a limited period of time, as like all creatures, he can get tired. He is capable of keeping up with Sonic whilst running through the use of his 2 tails. I mentioned earlier that Yasuhara thought that Sonic 2 would have a 2-year development schedule, which he was wrong about. I also mentioned that Sonic 2 was greenlit in November 1991 and had to be ready for the holiday season in 1992, so roughly 1 year. There was a huge and ambitious plot with many aspects being scrapped due to time constraints and hardware limitations, so let's take a look into some more scrapped aspects. Al Nielsen has said that Sonic 2 probably could have been 3 times the size if we left in everything that was there. Naka and team weren't afraid to say, "I've been working on this for 4 months, it's not working, let's take it out." Some of the levels cut in Sonic 2 was a forest level, which was implemented but hardly worked on. The same goes for a desert level. One cut level was called Genocide City. This level was renamed to Cyber City because the Japanese team had not understood the connotations of the word genocide, and its level layout was used for Metropolis Zone. The most notable level that was cut is Hidden Palace Zone. This zone was featured extensively in pre-release advertisements and found in prototype cartridges. Hidden Palace Zone was planned to be a secret zone that could be accessed by collecting the Chaos Emeralds according to Naka. It would have been the zone that would have explained the history of the Chaos Emeralds and grant Sonic his supersonic powers. Hidden Palace Zone was designed by level artist Craig Stitt, and he has gone on to say that his artwork was some of his favourite work. Hidden Palace Zone was one of the first zones implemented in the game, but work stopped in mid-1992 and was removed shortly before the completion of the game due to a lack of time to complete the zone and cartridge space. This zone was restored in the Sonic 2 remake released in 2013. Sega of America CEO Tom Kalinske, product manager Madeline Schroeder, and Nielsen worked closely with STI. Nielsen said the feedback loop helped the team determine what needed to be cut. Most of the cuts were made to the American developers' designs and were understandably furious when they found out their work had been cut. One designer, Brenda Cook, had all 3 of her levels cut. Stitt said that he may have been the only American whose art was used in the final game. The marketing campaign for Sonic 2 was very aggressive and cost $10 million, and promotion began in early 1992. Remember, Sonic and Sega were still in competition with Mario and Nintendo, and Sega promoted Sonic 2 as their biggest game of 1992, and Game Informer said that Sega marketing sought to make the release of Sonic 2 as much a celebration as it was a product launch. An early version of the game was promoted on the Nickelodeon game show Nick Arcade several times and included a competition between Clarissa Explains It All stars Melissa Joan Hart and Jason Zimbler, where Melissa Joan Hart struggled to play the game as she was unaware of the new spin dash attack added in the game. Here are the lengths Sega went to promote Sonic 2. T-shirts as pre-order gifts, sent stores dry erase boards to count down to the release of Sonic 2, teaser posters bore the slogan, "Are you up to it?" Sega of America collaborated with Emery Worldwide to produce stickers celebrating the Great Sonic 2 shipment. 50 people were dressed as Sonic and greeted 3 planes carrying copies of Sonic 2 at Heathrow Airport. Holographic labels on cartridges were considered but subsequently cancelled as they were considered as too expensive. At the last moment, Sega cancelled a tour of shopping malls across the USA, deciding it would be inadequate. Sonic 2 was made available to the West in all stores on the same day. This was an unusual practice as at the time, release dates were all dependent on region. Sega reconfigured its distribution system and used air shipping to ensure that all copies were available in all major stores. The North American and European release date, Tuesday, November 24th, 1992, was marketed as Sonic Tuesday and was released 3 days earlier in Japan, Saturday, November 21st, 1992. A similar release day slogan would be used in 1993 when the home console versions of Mortal Kombat hit stores on September 13th, 1993, dubbed Mortal Monday. The iconic Western cover art was illustrated by Greg Martin, whilst the Japanese cover art was illustrated by Akira Watanabe. As I just said, Sonic was released in Japan on Saturday, November 21st, 1992, and released in North America and Europe on Sonic Tuesday, November 24th, 1992. It went ahead and broke video game sales records and became the fastest selling game at the time of its release. In the USA, it sold 600,000 units within a day on top of the 400,000 pre-orders. In the UK, it sold 750,000 units within a week, accounting for 48% of all UK software. It was the top seller on Gallup's Sega charts for the UK, USA and Japan for months. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 grossed $450 million in 1992, and here's an astounding statistic. The release day revenue generated by Sonic the Hedgehog 2 exceeded the total revenue generated by the best-selling music CD released in 1992, which was Simply Red's Stars album, had earned throughout the entire year. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is the second best-selling Sega Genesis Mega Drive game of all time, with 6 million copies sold worldwide by August 2006. The game that pipped it to number 1 is the original Sonic the Hedgehog game. Here are some of the scores Sonic the Hedgehog 2 received. EGM described Sonic 2 as an impressive showcase of the Genesis hardware. The visuals were praised as colourful and detailed, and EGM and Mega highlighted the game's backgrounds for their intricacy. Mega, GamePro, and Mean Machine Sega praised the updated sprites, which were larger and better animated. Mean Machines would further state that Sonic's new animation frames made for a smoother appearance. Several critics would say that the graphics were better than the original. Reviewers also enjoyed the level designs and gameplay. They would comment that they were larger and featured more variety, which Computer and Video Games and GamePro stated that this incentivized exploration and replayability. Many critics considered the special stages a highlight. Tails was also highly praised, with GamePro and Beep Mega Drive calling him cute. Finally, reviewers praised the multiplayer mode and commented that it was one of Sonic 2's best additions. Sonic 2 received many year-end accolades and nominations. Here's a quick list of these. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, just like its predecessor, was a huge success and kept Sega competitive during the console wars between Sega and Nintendo in the early 90s. It solidified Sonic as a major franchise and cemented Sonic as a major video game mascot on par with Nintendo's Mario. It boosted the sales of the Genesis Mega Drive to nearly equalize Sega with Nintendo, making Sega a true juggernaut in the video game industry. The fallout from the post-release period of Sonic 2 is quite immense, and I will dedicate that to another retrospective down the line, because we need to move on. I just want to give you my own personal reflection on Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It was my brother who had Sonic the Hedgehog 2, as he had a Mega Drive and the original Sonic the Hedgehog. The original game I described as awesome and mind-blowing, but the second installment of the Sonic franchise took everything that was awesome about the first game and doubled that. The levels and the designs, the music, the gameplay and mechanics, the special stages, it was just fantastic and one hell of an experience. I'll always remember the special stages and how difficult they were. Playing as Tails and competing in the multiplayer race. This game is a classic case of doubling up because it doubled up on everything. Simply awesome. We've spent a considerable amount of time focusing on the history of Sonic, from his creation to the release of the first game, the development of Sonic 2 and its release. Now, to the main event. It's pretty common knowledge that Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles was originally meant to be released as one game. It was split into two games due to cartridge limitations, and Sega wanted to release the game in time for a promotional deal with McDonald's Happy Meal in February 1994. So, it was split into two games. Despite the split, the developers wanted the game to feel like a singular experience. So, with that spirit of a singular experience, I'm going to look at both games concurrently. Like Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles was developed in California by Sonic Technical Institute. The team that worked on Sonic 2 was split into two teams. One comprised of American developers who worked on Sonic Spinball. The other team was comprised of Japanese developers who would work on Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Yuji Naka and Hirokazu Yasuhara were the primary creators of the Sonic 3 design document and project schedule. Naka went ahead and selected the majority of the team, while STI director Roger Hector oversaw development and Pamela Kelly led the marketing. As stated, this was originally meant to be one single game, and according to designer Takashi Iizuka, the team really wanted to hit a home run, with larger stages that took longer to develop. Development began in January 1993 with the team initially wanting to use the Sega Virtua processing chip, which would have allowed for 3D graphics. They created a prototype of sorts with isometric graphics and gave it the working title of Sonic 3D. The original special stage featured a polygonal Sonic in a figure 8 shaped stage. When it became clear that this new chip wouldn't be ready by 1994, they restarted Sonic 3 as a traditional and more conventional 2D platform game. Iizuka said that the chip was an experiment to see whether or not Sonic would work in a 3D environment, and that it was stopped and abandoned due to the low polygon count. The isometric angle concept was revived just a few years later and applied and used for Sonic 3D Blast in 1996. According to Naka, the team wanted to tell a much deeper story and to expand the world Sonic lives in, which went ahead and greatly expanded the project's size. With the Sonic games being more action-based games with international appeal, they told the story visually with in-game cutscenes instead of text. With the expansion of the project's size, the zones in Sonic 3 and Knuckles tripled in size in comparison to Sonic 2. Additional bosses, different musical arrangements, and graphics were used to distinguish Act 1 from Act 2. Many of these developments were meant for Sonic 2 but were deferred and later implemented into Sonic 3. Roger Hector said that Sonic 3 had a troubled development. He said that he remembers having to prevent the rest of Sega from bothering the team while simultaneously making sure that the game is finished on time. Along with that level of stress, Hector struggled to balance the resources between Sonic 3 and other projects. Naka was seen as a harsh leader, and American staff not on the Sonic 3 team became jealous of the level of priority given to the game. With the game being split into two games, Sega faced the question on how to give players the full authentic experience of playing both Sonic 3 and Knuckles as one singular game. To answer this question, the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge was built with a lock-on adapter. According to Hector, this concept was first conceived between Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. The team went to Sega's hardware division and explained the situation to them. The top of the cartridge was built with an adapter that allowed you to connect both Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles together. Doing this allowed you to play both games as it was originally intended. You could play the Sonic 3 zones as Knuckles and explore areas of the zones that were not accessible whilst playing as Sonic, and playing as Tails in the Sonic & Knuckles zones. Finally, it gave you the chance to save progress in the Sonic & Knuckles zones. It allowed you to collect more emeralds known as Super Emeralds, but I will elaborate on that later. Attaching the Sonic 2 cartridge with the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge allowed you to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as Knuckles in a game called Knuckles in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. In fact, Sega knew that players would attach all kinds of cartridges to the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge. When booted up, it shows a picture of Knuckles, Tails, Robotnik, and Sonic with a text that says, "No way." The attached cartridge would access what is known as the blue sphere levels, and the attached cartridge would determine the level layout. If you attach the Sonic the Hedgehog cartridge, it would unlock all the blue sphere levels, and believe me, there's a shit ton of them. The gameplay with Sonic 3 and Knuckles is exactly the same as the previous two games. You can perform the spin attack and spin dash to destroy the Badniks, bosses and Robotnik bosses. Each level includes a variety of vertical loops, corkscrews, breakable walls, spikes, water for the player to drown, and bottomless pits. Tails can still swim underwater and fly using his tails, and I'll get to Knuckles and his abilities later. A new save feature was included in the game, and beating each level would automatically save the game. As either Sonic, Tails or Knuckles, you collect rings and act as an extra hit point. You can lose them when hit, but you can collect some before they disappear. If you lose a life for whatever reason, you lose your rings. Lose all your lives, it's game over. Each act and zone has a 10-minute time limit, and signpost acts as a checkpoint. There are 3 different shields you can get. The bubble shield, it gives the player the ability to breathe underwater. The fire shield, it gives the player resistance against fire and fire-based projectiles. The lightning shield, it gives the player a shield to attract nearby rings. All can prove highly valuable in certain situations, such as the bubble shield in Hydro City, which is mainly an underwater stage. Do you remember me saying that Michael Jackson was part of the design inspiration for Sonic? You know, his shoes and buckle being similar to the ones Michael wore on the cover of the Bad album. Well, according to several sources who were involved with the development of Sonic 3, Michael Jackson himself was involved in the development. Sega hired the King of Pop to compose the music for Sonic 3, but left the project and his work went uncredited. There was always speculation from fans because of the similarity between the music in the game and to Michael's own music. It wasn't until Roger Hector mentioned it in an interview in 2005. So, why did Michael Jackson, the King of Pop, the world's biggest music artist, want to team up with Sega and work on the music for Sonic 3? Simple. Jackson was a huge Sonic fan and even worked on the 1990 Sega game Moonwalker. A team was assembled and worked for 4 weeks at Record 1 in Los Angeles in 1993. They developed fully fledged tracks with extensive samples of Jackson beatboxing to be adapted for the Genesis Mega Drive. Hector said the work had a recognisable Jackson sound. Naka said that the development team visited Jackson's home at Neverland Ranch during the development. Naoto Oshima, the co-creator of Sonic, said Jackson recorded an a cappella demo tape for Sonic 3. There was just one problem, which has been said to have halted Michael's progress and involvement with Sonic 3. In 1993, Michael Jackson was accused of child sexual abuse. Due to these allegations, it has been said that Hector and Oshima terminated Jackson's involvement with the game, whilst Michael Jackson's tour director, Brad Buxer, has gone on to say that Jackson's team received no instruction to hold work and that they finished the soundtrack and sent it to Sega in mid-1993. Another story stated by Buxer and members of Jackson's team have stated that Jackson decided to go uncredited for his work because he was unhappy with how the Genesis Mega Drive, which as we know is incapable of playing back high quality audio, replicated his music. With Jackson leaving the project, Howard Drossin was brought in to rework the music. He was brought on board with the belief that he would be working alongside Michael. Poor guy. Other tracks were composed by other members of Sega's sound team, including Jen Sonoe, who became a regular composer for the series. Senior Sega staff, including the Sega of America president, Tom Kalinske, said that any involvement of Jackson was arranged without their knowledge and that no formal arrangements were made. In 2013, Hector said that any similarities to Jackson's music in Sonic 3 were unintentional. The journalist, Ken Horowitz, raised questions about Jackson's alleged involvement, such as how an agreement between Sega and Jackson could have been kept secret from the media, why Sega's marketing never mentioned Jackson's involvement, and why Jackson would reuse music originally composed for a video game. Just like with Sonic 2, we were introduced to a new character, initially conceived as a rival, but becoming a valuable ally for Sonic, Knuckles the Echidna, making his first appearance in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 as a rival and intimidator. As you know, noticed or have guessed, he is in the title for Sonic Knuckles. Knuckles was created by designer Takashi Yuda and envisioned him to be a supporting character to Sonic, as Yuda felt he would make a good playable character, but was decided that he would be a rival first and becoming a playable character after. Whilst creating Knuckles, numerous different animals and many designs were considered for the final design. It came down to 8 final designs, and they were tested among focus groups of young American children, and the most popular designs were the echidna design and a reptilian dinosaur design due to the popularity of Jurassic Park. Ultimately, they picked the echidna design due to the dreadlocks. Knuckles' long tail is a remnant from his dinosaur design. Yuji Naka pitched for Knuckles to be a more purple colour, while members of the team pitched for a red or green design. However, after conducting the same research with American children, it was decided that Knuckles' primary colour would be red due to its overwhelming popularity. Knuckles' shoe coloration was inspired by the Jamaican flag, and his original name before settling on Knuckles was Dreads, referring to his dreadlocks. The emphasis on Knuckles was his ability to break walls, and his ability to glide, cling to walls, and climb was to introduce more vertical gameplay within the series. His original ability was meant to be a more whirlwind attack rather than punching. When you look at Sonic and Knuckles together, Sonic symbolises speed, whilst Knuckles symbolises power, and when you link this to his abilities to punch, break walls, climb walls and glide, it emphasises his strength and power, showing him to be a formidable intimidator to Sonic to begin with until he becomes a close ally. As we know, this helped give him a headlining role in Sonic & Knuckles. Right, let's take a look at Knuckles and his history. Knuckles is the only living descendant of a well-established clan of echidnas. For many years, his clan guarded one of the most valuable gemstones in the known universe, the Master Emerald. This controls the Chaos Emerald, which, as we know, is one of the main focuses of the series and what gives Angel Island the ability to float. Because of his duty to guard the Master Emerald, Knuckles has spent most of his life atop the floating Angel Island, guarding the Master Emerald from harm and from it falling into the wrong hands. As with Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and Knuckles received an overhaul with its special stages, but there are 3 types of special stages. To access the first type of special stage is the same as Sonic 2. Collect 50 rings, hit a checkpoint signpost, a sparkly ring appears on top, jump into it, and bam! You're in the special stage. This special stage is in a 2D environment, and you go into this gumball machine with springs lining each wall. At the bottom is a large spring to launch you back up, but it will disappear when you hit it once. Like I said, springs line up each side, which bounce you from side to side, and hitting the handle in the machine releases a ball with a prize. It could be rings, a 1-up, or shields. Then it can release something crappy like a bubble and a hard ball, which you can bounce off. Fall down the hole left by the spring-loaded floor and you exit the special stage. This was used in Sonic 3. The next special stage, which is in Sonic Knuckles, to access it, you only need 20 rings. Hit the checkpoint signpost, sparkly ring appears, jump, and bam, you're in. The design for this one is different. You have an electric field coming from below, and you have these giant glowing orbs that Sonic, Tails, or Knuckles can jump onto. You can control the direction you jump as you orbit this orb, and when you hit the jump button, you will jump off that orb and hopefully onto the next one. Your velocity is determined as to when you hit the jump button. Anyway, you can collect more goodies such as rings, shields, and a 1-up. If you get hit by the electric field coming below, you're sent back to the zone. If you reach the top and jump off the screen, you're sent back to the zone. To access the third special stage, you have to find giant rings that have been placed in specific areas of each zone and act. You don't have to collect any rings for this, just find them and jump into them. Then, you're transferred to the Blue Spheres Special Stage. The Blue Spheres Special Stage is a 3D environment and you have to run around the map hitting the blue spheres. When you do, they turn red. Hit a red sphere.
You lose! Good day, sir!
Collect the blue spheres in a specific cycle, such as a square or a rectangle. They turn into rings. Collecting all the rings gets the player a perfect. Collect all the blue spheres and you get the Chaos Emerald. Collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds and you guessed it, you become Super Sonic and Super Knuckles. Collecting 7 Chaos Emeralds and turning into Super Sonic and Super Knuckles isn't enough, right? So, once you've collected all the Chaos Emeralds, you can collect the 7 Super Emeralds. To collect the Super Emeralds is the same way as the Chaos Emeralds. Find the giant rings, which have now become very glowy and change colours. Enter a Blue Spheres Special Stage, collect all the blue spheres, and collect your reward, the Super Emerald. Once you have collected all the Super Emeralds, you can transform into Hyper Sonic, Hyper Knuckles, and Super Tails. Yes! Tails finally gets his own special form. Hyper Sonic looks exactly like Super Sonic. He has the same body proportions, raised quills, but instead of being a golden colour, his colour changes, similar to the Super Emeralds. When running at full speed, Sonic will leave a blur of Sonics behind him. Like Sonic, to turn into Hyper Sonic, just collect 50 rings, jump, hit the button again, and you turn into Hyper Sonic. You lose a ring every second, like Super Sonic, so you have to keep replenishing those rings. He retains the same powers, jumps higher, runs faster, but has the Hyper Flash attack, which can destroy all enemies on the screen, not the bosses though. He can also breathe underwater, which makes drowning impossible. But get crushed, fall into a pit, or hit the 10-minute time limit, and you die and lose a life. To get Hyper Knuckles, it's exactly the same as Hyper Sonic. Knuckles though doesn't change in body shape, but his colour glows from red to a whitish pink. He too leaves a blur of Knuckles behind him when he runs at full speed. Knuckles already boasts some impressive abilities and strengths. This is multiplied many times over whilst in hyper form, which makes him practically invulnerable. When gliding though, and if he hits a wall at full speed, it unleashes his Shockwave attack, which causes an earthquake and destroys all the enemies on the screen. Moving on to Super Tails now. To change into this form, it's exactly the same as Sonic and Knuckles. Similar to Knuckles, his body doesn't transform. He does however glow like the others with a golden glow. When he transforms into Super Tails, he is invincible, runs and flies faster. Unlike Hypersonic and Knuckles, he can still drown though.
Bogus.
When he transforms, he is accompanied by 4 flickies, which follow him around. These flickies will target any enemy on screen and destroy them instantly, and even attack those bastard Eudorus ghosts in Sandopolis Zone. However, they will not attack Knuckles in the Hidden Palace. Right, I believe I've covered everything that I can regarding the development, involvement of Michael Jackson, gameplay and mechanics changes, the special stages, the hyper and super forms of our heroes, the development of Knuckles. I think it's safe to say I can move on to the plot of the game. To get this right, I'm going to split the plot into 2 parts, the Sonic 3 plot and the Sonic & Knuckles plot. Let's begin. After Sonic and Tails destroy Dr. Robotnik's space station, the Death Egg, at the conclusion of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the Death Egg crash lands on Angel Island, which causes this mysterious floating island to crash into the ocean. It is here that Dr. Robotnik meets Knuckles the Echidna, who is the last member of an ancient Echidna tribe, sworn to protect the Master Emerald. The Master Emerald is what grants the island the power to float, and has the same power as the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Robotnik convinces Knuckles that Sonic is trying to steal the Master Emerald and that the launch base is Sonic's base, turning Sonic and Knuckles against each other. Sonic and Tails arrive at Angel Island on the biplane, the Tornado, only to be ambushed by Knuckles and steals the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic and Tails traverse the islands and zones. These include Angel Island, Hydro City, Marble Garden, Carnival Night, my personal favourite, Ice Cap, and Launch Base. The Death Egg is under repairs at Launch Base, where Sonic and Tails defeat Knuckles and face Dr. Robotnik one more time on a platform on the Death Egg as it launches, heading back into space. After defeating Dr. Robotnik once again, the Death Egg crashes onto Angel Island once again. Sonic and Tails travel through the zones, which consist of Mushroom Hill, Flying Battery, Sandopolis, my most personal hated, Lava Reef, Hidden Palace, Sky Sanctuary, Death Egg, and the Doomsday Zone. In the Hidden Palace, Sonic and Knuckles fight once more, with Sonic defeating Knuckles, where during the fight, Dr. Robotnik steals the Master Emerald, which is the secret to the island's power to levitate. Knuckles attacks Dr. Robotnik but gets shocked with electricity, leading Knuckles to show Sonic a portal allowing him to teleport to Sky Sanctuary, where the Death Egg is about to launch. Sonic infiltrates the Death Egg, destroying everything in his path, leading to a final showdown in the Doomsday Zone. Sonic destroys the Death Egg and defeats Dr. Robotnik once again and returns the Master Emerald to Angel Island as it rises to the sky once more. At the conclusion of Sonic's story, Knuckles is attacked by Egg Robo, one of Dr. Robotnik's machines. Knuckles chases the Egg Robo through the zones to the damaged remains of Sky Sanctuary, where Mecha Sonic attacks Knuckles and destroys the Egg Robo. Using the power of the Master Emerald, Mecha Sonic turns into his super form. Knuckles and Super Mecha Sonic fight, and Knuckles defeats the machine, and Sonic flies in the tornado to help Knuckles and take him and the Master Emerald back to Angel Island, where it rises back into the sky. The marketing and promotional campaign for the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 cost double of what it cost Sonic the Hedgehog 2, as the marketing and promotional campaign cost $20 million. To help promote the European release of the game, British band Right Said Fred adapted their song Wonder Man to include references to Sonic. The song was used as a promotional song for the game and released as a single, which charted in the UK at number 55. The marketing and promotional campaign for the release of Sonic & Knuckles cost double and more of what it cost Sonic 3. It cost a whopping $45 million, as it was being released around the same time as Nintendo's Donkey Kong Country, and both games were advertising revolutionary new technology. Sonic & Knuckles was advertising and promoting the lock-on technology, whilst Donkey Kong Country was advertising and promoting its 3D rendered graphics. Blockbuster Video and MTV co-sponsored a tournament in which kids could play Sonic & Knuckles. The final of the tournament was held at none other than Alcatraz Island, a notorious prison island just over a mile away from San Francisco. The prize? $25,000 and the title of the world's most hardcore gamer. The two finalists were awarded a copy of every single Sega product released for the next year. MTV would broadcast the finals of the tournament along with footage of the game, calling it MTV's Rock the Rock. Sonic 3 would release on February 2nd, 1994, and it became one of the Mega Drive's best-selling games by selling 1.02 million copies in the United States. Fast forward to October 18th, 1994, Sonic & Knuckles was released and it sold 1.24 million copies in the United States. Collectively, both Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles sold a staggering 4 million cartridges worldwide. Here are some of the scores that both games scored by critics upon their release. Both games would go on to receive critical acclaim. For Sonic 3, many critics revered it as the best game in the series, such as Andrew Humphreys of Hyper, who was not a Sonic fan, wrote that it was undoubtedly the best game in the series. Sega Magazine would continue this sentiment and would state that Sonic 3 has better special stages than Sonic 2, not only superior to Sonic 2, but would be a serious contender for the best platform game ever award. GamePro proclaimed that it proves that you can teach an old hedgehog new and exciting tricks. Take that old Sonic magic, add fun new variations, and you have another spectacular game. Many aspects of the level design was praised as well. Electronic Gaming Monthly and Sega Power enjoyed the expansive stages, secret areas, much less linear level design and difficulty. Mean Machines agreed with this sentiment, describing the game as a roller coaster ride from start to finish. They described that Carnival Night was their favourite zone, which they described as probably the most slickly programmed portion of game in Mega Drive history. The visuals were also well received for Sonic 3. Here's just an example of what critics said. One of the most beautiful games ever. The graphics were stunning. Attention to detail is breathtaking. Gorgeous background detail and lots of visual treats. Sonic & Knuckles 2 received a ton of praise, particularly for the lock-on technology. Electronic Gaming Monthly named it their Game of the Month. GamePro would comment that it is essentially two games in one with the ability to play as Knuckles, that it is more challenging than Sonic 3, and locking the game onto Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 makes those games worth playing again. Lucas Thomas of IGN said that Sonic & Knuckles was a great game on its own, but the lock-on feature completely revamped the whole experience. Dan Whitehead of Eurogamer preferred Sonic & Knuckles over Sonic 3, stating that he could not fully appreciate its predecessor without its companion piece. Sega Magazine would also heap praise onto the lock-on technology and the new innovation the unique cartridge offered, adding that Sonic & Knuckles' hidden stages and bosses would strongly add to the replay value of the game combined. Following the release of Sonic & Knuckles, the Sonic 3 and Knuckles version of the game was critically praised. Computer and Video Games rated this version of the game at a remarkable 97% and said, while you need to buy both Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles to fully enjoy it, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is the best platform experience and what video games were invented for. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles were the first two Sega Mega Drive games I personally owned. You need to remember, I didn't have the Mega Drive, my brother did. I was very much more a Nintendo gamer as a kid, but I still would play the Mega Drive, specifically the Sonic games that my brother had. To get Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles for what was my 7th birthday, it was awesome. Plugging in those games, playing them from start to finish, collecting the emeralds, playing the blue sphere levels over and over until I could no longer play them because I had attained double vision and my brain had turned into mashed potato. Seeing Knuckles for the first time and seeing how much of a badass he was, how strong he was, his gliding skills, and how I saw him go from a villain to a hero in the space of just a few hours of playing. I understand that everyone's favourite retro Sonic game is Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and I see why. It was fast, it was furious, the music kicked ass, the gameplay was doubled up on. The special stages were as tough as nails. You could become Super Sonic for the first time, and it just overall kicked ass. Don't get me wrong, I love Sonic 2 as well, but I always say that my favourite retro Sonic game is Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Why? First of all, there's the nostalgia factor. I got these for my 7th birthday. I took a trip to our local Blockbuster Video and I managed to get both games for my birthday. They were my first Mega Drive games. The zones are awesome. The zones are bigger. The shields are awesome. The music is awesome. The introduction of Knuckles is awesome. The special stages are awesome. Getting Hypersonic and Knuckles and Super Tails is awesome. Even with certain enemies such as the Hudorus in Sandopolis, who are complete arseholes, the game is still awesome. I love Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and I always will. Since the release of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the franchise continues to live on. Multiple games have been released, multiple TV series have been released. Sonic has crossed over to many franchises such as Super Smash Bros. To continue his fight for supremacy against Mario, as well as Fall Guys. He's a cultural icon, a pop culture icon, and a remnant of what was cool and awesome about the 90s. Sonic has successfully transitioned into film as well. The live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movie featuring the likes of James Marsden and Jim Carrey, with the vocal talents of Ben Schwartz, was released on February 14th, 2020. And despite the world slowly entering lockdown and shutting down because of the coronavirus epidemic, it still became a box office success by grossing $319.7 million at the global box office. Its sequel, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which featured the first live-action appearance of Knuckles, who was voiced by Idris Elba, and the vocal skills of Colleen O'Shaughnessy, who has voiced Tails for many years, was an even bigger success. Being released worldwide from March 30th, 2022, where the world was coming out the other side of lockdowns and the coronavirus epidemic, the sequel went on to gross $405.4 million at the global box office. And as of today, December 20th, 2024, we are seeing the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which will feature the first live-action appearance of Shadow the Hedgehog, who will be voiced by the one and only Keanu Reeves. We can only expect this film to be a smash hit as well. With that being said, I know the official 30th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles was on February 2nd, 1994 and October 18th, 1994, so I'm a little late to the party, but there's no better time to bring you this video about an incredible series of games than on the release of this character's third film in his own trilogy. With that being said, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey with what has effectively been the history of the retro Sonic the Hedgehog games, but known as the history of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, a 30th anniversary retrospective. We've been through the entire retro franchise of Sonic games together, besides the spin-off games, and I hope that you've enjoyed yourself. As always, I want to thank you for joining me here on World-1 Entertainment, and if you liked the video, give it a like. Share the video as well, because the more shares, the more views, the more the channel continues to grow, and as Bryan Adams once sang, everything I do it for you. Subscribe to World-1 Entertainment, and don't forget to check out the other content that is currently available, because you never know, there might be something that you like. If you do subscribe, hit that notification bell so you are notified about any and all content that goes live onto the channel. Drop me a comment below and let's share some memories. Thank you for joining me here on World-1 Entertainment, and as always, I will see you next time. Take it easy, everyone.